All right, so the Exorcist Believer, I thought it was really good. It's one I'm going to have to think about a little bit more before I really get into giving a good opinion on it, because I felt some things might have been a little off, but then again, that could have been good for the movie, for the story that was trying to be told. I think if you're looking for a movie that has a whole bunch of possession and leaning heavily on that side of things, you might be disappointed. Whereas this movie, it seems to kind of jump into the possession part quickly, like for instance, not too much of a spoiler, but someone gets possessed and they go from like not being possessed to being possessed, and taking a giant leap forward in the story, a much bigger leap than you would expect. You would almost want to, you almost kind of expect a gradual transition between they're not possessed to, oh yes, they really are possessed. But in this movie, it's kind of like, they're not possessed. Yep, they're possessed. Quickly. And that felt a little odd, but there's a lot going on around just the possession. There's a lot more characters and a lot more plot going on than that the film chooses to explore. And I would say, comparing it to the first Exorcist, because this is obviously very much tied in with the first Exorcist as far as some main characters go from the first movie. But in the first one, you see a very gradual increase in the possession as far as believing in it. And I feel like if they tried to do that in this movie, they would have just fell back, and it would have felt like they were just trying to copy things from the first movie and give you those quote-unquote member berries, which you get a couple instances in this where you're like, oh, they said the same line of dialogue there, and oh, they said it, oh, yep, that's a piece of dialogue from the first movie. But that only happens a couple of times, and it's appropriate. But I think definitely if they focused on the possession and really focused on the buildup of that, they would have been not forced to rely and kind of mirror the first movie, but it would have, they would almost had to have, because, how can you do it without really making callbacks to the first movie in abundant, in a large amount, step by step. You don't want, oh, here's the scene where they have the EKG. Here's the scene where they have a therapist. Here's the scene where they have this. Instead, it's like, we get it. We kind of understand the gradual, what can happen when someone gets possessed. We just kind of get there. And instead, this movie focuses on, well, there's some themes that I would rather not spoil here, because they're apparent in the movie, and they're worth not being spoiled when you take a look at everything outside of just solely the possession aspect of it. I really liked how they did some of the character callbacks from the first movie. I thought it wasn't just done because they were going to do it. It was done because, it helped our lead character, the father here. It helps his entire character plot. It was super important that they brought back the lead actress from the first movie. I thought everything was handled very well. It's definitely not trying to capitalize on the first movie to try and just pump out this movie. We're talking, this is 50 years apart from the first one. But I think it's not trying to speak to an older audience, and it's not trying to speak to a new audience that's trying to lure them in or something like that. It's kind of doing its own thing, but being very smart about it. It's not a perfect movie. I feel like it feels maybe there's some pacing or there's a lack of energy maybe. It's kind of hard to pinpoint right now, just coming out of it, some of the issues. But I would say overall, it lacks a little bit of energy. I thought the pacing was really good. It's just missing a little something. Now the very first Exorcist is like a pretty long movie and really delves into the characters as much as it does the possession scenes. Whereas this one, a much shorter movie, definitely relies more on funny enough, it relies on the characters and less on the possession. And so if you're into, if you're looking for a movie that is just horror scenes after horror scenes after horror scenes, I think you might be disappointed. But if you appreciate something that focuses on the plot and the characters, you're gonna have a really good time with this. So I recommend it. It's not perfect. It's not great. I thought it was really good. So until the next one, have a good evening.